The bus pulled away. I stood alone in front of the gas station, hating my life. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cracked pavement, making the place feel even more isolated. My afternoon shift began at 5 p.m. and ended at midnight. My boyfriend had agreed to pick me up most days, but the idea of leaving so late still wasn't thrilling. Obviously, it wasn't my first choice of work, but money was money, and I needed a job. I pushed open the glass door. A small bell jingled above me, but the place felt empty. The shelves were lined with dusty snacks and overpriced car accessories. Behind the counter stood the grumpiest-looking man I had ever seen, staring at the register like he wanted to punch it. A name tag hung onto the front of his shirt. Greg, manager. "Hello,
You're Sarah,"
he said, barely looking up. Yeah.
"Locker's in the back."
He huffed.
"Use Gary's."
"I'm sharing with someone else?"
"Nah, I fired him last week. About time. He was slow in the head. Couldn't even scan barcodes right. Eyes pointed sideways. Couldn't understand a flippin' word he was saying. Thought we could save some money with him, as a cheap hire. But he probably lost us more than that."
I hesitated before nodding. "All right." Before I could turn away, the door behind me jingled again. A man in a worn baseball cap and flannel jacket stepped inside, balancing a couple of small packages. He turned to me.
"Ah, you must be the new girl,"
he said, his voice warm and friendly. He had a slight southern accent. "Great to meet you," I said, relieved that at least someone here seemed nice.
"I'm Martin,"
he said, setting the boxes down on the counter and shaking my hand.
"I come by a few times a day, mostly deliveries, but most of the time it'll just be you and Greg."
He glanced at Greg, whose face was scrunched into a permanent frown, then looked back at me.
"Bless your heart,"
he said with pity, and then left. I forced a smile at Greg before heading to the locker room. The room was cramped, and the air inside was stale. A set of 2 lockers sat on top of each other. The bottom one, with a padlock, had a paper sticker label that read Martin in black Sharpie, and the one above it said Gary. I pulled it open and was about to dump my coat and bag inside when I spotted a small, beat-up paperback notebook tucked into the corner. The book had a brown cover and worn edges, the paper soft from use. I flicked through the notebook. The first page was filled with squares and lines, and the rest with other doodles, circles, swirls, stick figures, little animals. Some of the pages had been pressed so hard the marks left grooves in the paper. Picturing a mentally disabled man being shouted at by Greg every other minute, I chewed the inside of my cheek. I set the notebook on top of the lockers so that if Gary ever came back, it would be there waiting for him. Then I got to work cleaning the place for the evening. Apart from the main shop, there was just a locker room, a break room, and a bathroom in the back with a clogged sink. I was glad it wasn't a huge area to clean at least, and already pretty spotless. I served some customers for a few hours and went back to the break room to have my dinner. Martin was in there, scoffing down a pepperoni pizza.
"How's it going?"
he asked, taking another bite. We had a chat, and I asked him about Gary.
"Yeah, he got the boot last week,"
Martin confirmed.
"He was this handicapped guy customers kept complaining about. A woman came in and asked him if there was a bathroom. He pointed at the locker room. Should have seen the look on Greg's face."
Martin chuckled to himself. After I had settled into my new job, the days passed by surprisingly quick. Sometimes it was unnerving being alone at the till when it was dark out, but otherwise, nothing out of the ordinary really happened. I was told the morning was busier, which I suspected, as usually a maximum of 10 people would come during my entire shift. One night, as I was cleaning, I checked my phone. Still no messages from my boyfriend. Annoyed he was running late, I grabbed the vacuum and started cleaning through the aisles, trying to pass the time. As I was cleaning, the pattern I was moving in seemed familiar, like déjà vu. I was walking through a snake-like path of 6 rows. Then it occurred to me. Was that the pattern I had seen in the first page of Gary's notebook? I propped the vacuum against the shelf and went to the locker room, plucking the notebook off the top of the lockers. Indeed, there were 5 straight rectangular lines inside a larger box, creating 6 spaces between them. The lines weren't just random markings. They were the shelves between the aisles. Next to the big box were a few smaller boxes. I realized one was the locker room on the far left. Next to it was the break room, and on the adjacent side was a box that must have represented the bathroom. Perhaps Gary wasn't as dim as they thought. I smiled to myself. Then there was one more box behind the one in the locker room's position, which was shaded in. I frowned, looking back up. From where I stood, the store had 4 rooms. There was no 5th. I looked down at the notebook again. The extra room was marked right next to the locker room. I turned toward the locker room door, staring at it. A large filing cabinet with a bunch of cardboard boxes stacked on top of it stood in the corner. I nudged the cabinet forward a little. Just wall. Then I heard footsteps across the shop coming towards the locker room. I shifted the cabinet back into place. Greg emerged in the locker room doorway, arms crossed. His eyes flicked around the room before landing on me.
"Your boyfriend's looking for you,"
he said flatly. "Right. Thanks." Greg didn't move as I walked past him, but I could feel his eyes lingering on me. I tried to shake it off as I stepped outside into the cool night air with my boyfriend. For the next week of my shift, I started feeling anxious every time I entered the locker room and saw the cabinet for some reason. I even moved the cabinet a few times to check a secret door hadn't magically appeared. Maybe there used to be a room behind there, or Gary's drawing wasn't accurate. After a while, I naturally forgot about it, until I began noticing something about Martin. Most of the time, He took boxes from deliveries straight to the break room, where we kept extra stock and supplies. That made sense. Greg would unpack them for me to stack onto the shelves. But every few days, at the end of the day just before I left, I saw him taking large packages to the locker room. He would come out empty-handed. When I entered the locker room after, I never saw any packages. I bumped into him entering the locker room with a large package one night.
"Oh, hey, see you tomorrow,"
he said, and he immediately turned back out of the room with the package, heading towards the break room. As I was about to leave that night, I saw him exit the break room and walk the package back towards the locker room. One night, I moved the cabinet again. As expected, nothing out of the ordinary. But this time, before I replaced the cabinet, I looked down. I noticed a faint, large square-shaped outline on the ground where the cabinet had been sitting. There was a small key-shaped hole inside the square to one side. I stared in disbelief, then stepped on the area a few times. It moved slightly. So this was where Martin's packages had been mysteriously disappearing. Footsteps were getting closer. I shoved the cabinet back into place and left the room. Greg stood silently, right outside against the wall, startling me as I walked out.
"Giving yourself a break, I see."
I shook my head and went back to the till. For the next few days, I didn't attempt to move the cabinet again. I was afraid of being caught, but the uncomfortable feeling lingered. There was probably nothing interesting down there, but a part of me was certain such a well-hidden door would hold secrets behind it. And perhaps Gary was fired for discovering something he shouldn't have. On a pitch-black Friday night, my boyfriend turned on the engine and was about to drive us away when I spotted Martin taking a parcel out of the back of his van. It was one of those larger boxes he sometimes brought to the locker room. I watched him as he walked into the gas station, having left his van doors open. Curiosity overwhelmed me. "Babe, hold on a sec. I'll be back," I said, jumped out of the passenger side, and ran across the parking lot until I was standing just outside the open doors. Stacks of cardboard boxes were taped up tightly. I stepped into the van and pushed one of the boxes closest to the entrance to the back of the van. It shifted slightly, and I could tell there were multiple smaller items inside, but the sound of liquid was unmistakable. My eyes drifted to a sheet of paper on top of the box. I picked it up. Heart times 10, tick. Liver times 10, tick. Kidney times 10, pears, tick. I looked back and spotted Martin coming out of the gas station. Then he spotted me too. We locked eyes, and he looked surprised at first, but then his expression turned into one of rage. He normally had an easygoing expression, so seeing his face contort like that was genuinely the stuff of nightmares. He started sprinting towards the van. I jumped out so fast I hit the floor rolling, then got up and ran as fast as I could towards my boyfriend's car. "We're getting the fuck out of here. Let's go. Let's fucking go. I yelled as I slammed the door shut. I called the cops as we sped away and explained everything, from discovering Gary's notebook and the secret door to the boxes in Martin's van. Greg and Martin were promptly arrested. The cops discovered refrigerators full of boxes of human organs underneath the locker room, and they were charged with organ trafficking and money laundering. They had been smuggling them as part of a larger operation and distributing them to buyers around the country from the dark web. Gary was a mentally disabled man who had been an employee at the gas station before I joined. For a while, I worried about Gary's safety, but that concern didn't last long. He was found and arrested the next day. Turns out, he wasn't just a bystander. He had been coerced into the operation, fully complicit in the horrors unfolding behind that hidden door. Maybe the law will go easier on him, given that his brain never matured past the age of a 6-year-old. But there's one detail I doubt they'll overlook. Greg didn't fire him out of pity or frustration. He fired him when he caught him stealing and eating the organs. I hope you enjoyed the story. For more content, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Your support keeps the shadows dark. If you want more Sinister, links to my social media and Spotify can be found in the description, unless you're already there. Don't forget to sign up to the Patreon, where you can see all the content a day earlier, and an exclusive video every month once we hit 20 patrons. Until next time, keep your lights low, eyes open, and your doors locked.